Hello, good morning, boys. Uh, Today we are going to talk about the chapter 7 of your history book, or history lesson, that is the First World War. The First World War took place in the year 1914 to 1918. Though this war was fought for more or less 5 years, 4.5 years, it was in preparation, so to say, for a long time. If you have studied the history, world history, you have studied about the unification of Italy and the unification of Germany. Unification of Italy took place in 1860 and unification of Germany took place in 1870. And these unifications came about with the war against France. And France had been humiliated again and again by Germany at the international scene. When the unification took place, both Germany and Italy found themselves lagging behind in industrial revolution that we had talked about in the last chapter. Industrial revolution put many of the European countries on the path of development, on the path of progress. There was an upward social mobility. And all of a sudden, Italy and Germany found themselves without industries, trying to progress. But industrialization or industrial revolution also was possible in many of these countries, and especially in Britain, because these countries, these nations had colonies elsewhere. Colonies supplied these countries with raw materials, and colonies were also ready markets for the finished products from these countries, from where they used to get their wealth by way of taxes and by way of employment, so many other things. So there was a race for colonization and race for industrialization. With the dawn of intellectual revolution, there was also another movement in Europe, a national patriotism, or sort of nationalism was growing in Europe. So there were very many causes for the World War. Number one, it was aggressive nationalism. Secondly, it was economic rivalry. And there were alliances that were formed by various nations between each other. And fourthly, there was also an armament race. New weapons, new kind of ships were being built, new weapons were invented. And there was also a kind of neo-imperialism. Many countries wanted to be like an empire. Even Germany wanted to be an empire. Though it was late in entering the race, it wanted to be an empire. There were basically 6 empires during the time of the First World War. Before the First World War, you can say. The British Empire, the French Empire, the German Empire, Russian Empire, Austrian and Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. That is modern-day Turkey and the Balkan nations. And Austria-Hungary also had some of the countries under its wings in the Balkans. The Balkans are, the present-day Serbia, Croatia, Czechoslovakia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, all these nations in the vicinity of the Adriatic Sea. And these small nations, ethnically, because they were different, they had their own kind of nationalism or patriotism. And they did not want to be under somebody else, either Ottoman Empire or Austro-Hungarian Empire at all. With the growth of nationalism, there was a kind of rivalry that was built up. There was kind of a bitterness that was built up against the dominant powers, and therefore very many aggressive groups were emerging who wanted to win their freedom with violence. Economic rivalry was also there, having many colonies and to get the supply of raw materials and the market to sell the finished products, made some countries flourish and other countries were reduced to impoverishment. So that kind of rivalry also was there. Armament race. The nations wanted to be prepared for any war. Why is it? Because many a time when there was tension and when there was a dispute, in the olden times, war was a solution. War also changed the boundaries of the nation. War also meant resources, going and occupying very resourceful places. Just like France had lost two provinces which are called as Alsace and Lorraine, and they were economically very, very productive provinces. The loss of it was never recovered by French people, and they wanted to get those provinces back to them, return to them. So the immediate cause of the World War, the First World War, is the Sarajevo incident, whereby the Austrian Archduke who was in line for throne was murdered, and stoked by or instigated by Germany, Austria declared war on Bosnia, and Germany also joined in, but Germany, by way of Belgium, attacked France. So it just became an immediate cause. Germany had its own agenda for the war. It was a country which was landlocked, so to say, did not have much of access to the sea. It also resented the dominance, the naval dominance of Britain. It also resented its lack of colonies. So it saw a solution in the war itself, whereby it could capture vast territories and maintain its economy and maintain its dominance in the world scenario. Germany at that time, in the beginning of the First World War, hoped for a very swift war, a war that would not have lasted for a year or two maybe. But the war lasted 4.5 years, and that was one of the cause of its failure, because Germany had very limited resources. Its navy was blockaded. Over and above that, it made the mistake of antagonizing the United States of America, which was neutral by then or until then. But when US joined the war, the allies were Russia, France and Britain, later on joined by Americans, USA. The allies with US joining the war had a lot of resources and it could prolong the war. The trench warfare just prolonged the length of the war. There could not be any swift victories, and therefore when the war prolonged, it showed all the weaknesses of Germany. The German power surrendered in November of 1918. Very many reasons or causes for its failure are there, and it's all noted, given to you in the notes. Please go through it. With the end of the First World War, there were many other countries that emerged, like Poland, which was partly part of Russia and partly part of Germany, was made into a separate entity. Many of the Balkan nations were declared independent. It is called the World War because many nations from the world, like Australia, soldiers from India were involved in it. USA was involved in it. Turkey itself, to a large extent, is situated in Asia. So many of the continents were involved. So therefore, it is called the World War, though many of the wars were basically fought in Europe. This World War did not, though there was peace treaty and so on, this World War was or had already sown the seeds of the Second World War. And that's why the First World War, the study of the First World War is very important for us. Please go through the notes, which is very clear, and study very clearly.